Another reason why I left Christianity, the church, fundamentalism, is because the church blames women for men's misconduct. Now, as usual, I'm going to put a caveat in here because people in the comments generally see these videos as something that's an attack on their church. As I've said in every previous new topic, these are my experiences based on the churches and denominations I've attended and been immersed with for 30 years. If you come from a different denomination or the same denomination I grew up in and you had a different experience, that's fine. If you've had a similar but different or exactly the same, those are all valid experiences. I don't want to be attacked in the comments section by people who are saying that this is not the Christianity they know. Well, these videos aren't about those people. It's about my experiences. And churches do teach their members to blame women for men's inability to control themselves. If you grew up in a denomination that thankfully didn't teach the St. Augustine's dogma about women causing the fall, or they treated women as equal with respect, and they didn't allow men to cowardly shift blame, then you grew up or experienced sometime in your life a more positive experience of religion. But like myself, a lot of people did not experience that. And if you're not a woman, you won't experience the kind of disdain and reactions that people get if you're not a woman in church. You can hear about negative experiences. You can even experience them being in the room or knowing someone. It's not the same thing as having it directed at yourself. Religion, from the dawn of time, blames women for everything. There are denominations, religions, and churches out there that have slowly walked away from that belief system. Christianity, overall, not all Christians believe the same things, which is why there's over 40,000 denominations. If you're part of the more liberal churches that are more accepting, more liberal, and they don't believe in the archaic, sexist version of Christianity, then you're lucky. I grew up in the Southern Baptist, fundamentalist, extreme versions of Christianity. And regardless of what women do, how they dress, how they go about their life, they are always, at least from what I've seen, blamed for every behavior, word, or activity that goes wrong or causes somebody else to stumble, give in to temptation, or have the inability to control their own thoughts and behaviors. And some people will say, well, that's not what Jesus taught. And some people might be right. But it didn't do much to change the view of how men see women. You look at purity culture, one of the most evil forms of Christianity. Purity culture basically strips women of their value, their autonomy, their agency, their sovereignty, and turns them into a valued system. And when I mean valued, I mean you have to meet very stringent guidelines and roles to be considered valuable. If you're not a virgin, if you tempt people, or if you made a mistake and had an affair, got pregnant, or married, or divorced, religion has never been kind to women or people in vulnerable positions. I mean, the oldest doctrine of, I think his name was St. Augustine of Hippo, who created the idea we still universally understand and recognize as blaming women for being easy to be tempted, a person who easily tempts other people, that women are not fully human, and they rely on men, which is why we haven't elected a female leader, because if you go deep into the subconscious of adult voters, they will never see a woman as fully competent and equal to that of a man. And they can deny it as much as they want. But we've had 47 chances to elect a female, an African American, an Asian, or someone from the queer community, and we've only elected one African American president, Obama. We will elect any man over any woman. Men still don't see women as fully human and as a complete whole human being. That's why women are always asked questions about their marital status. And why women are asked, "Where's your kids?" And nobody asks men that. I would say most men wouldn't know where their kids are. Or what their kids' birthdays are. I mean, if women weren't in charge of the domestics and the children, our world would collapse. And it goes all the way back to religion and the patriarchy. How women are expected to dress in church or outside of the church is all about how men can avoid accountability. If you've ever been near or grown up in Southern Baptist churches, they're very patriarchal. Extreme sexism. I mean, they believe it's a judgment to hear a woman speak. Like, how low of an opinion of a group of people that are the majority on this planet, how low of an opinion of these people do you have to view women like that? I mean, every man started out as a woman. And the way women are talked about in these churches is dehumanizing. And we talked about it last time, that the church teaches that all men are obsessed with sex and can't control themselves. And I briefly talked about how this protects predators. How if men are victimized, how it keeps them from reporting it. How women are viewed, how they're not believed due to it's so deep in our psyche. Even if you're not in extreme versions of religion, it's so deeply ingrained in our psyche that if a woman is testifying against a man for misconduct, we still ask what she was wearing. We don't ask that when a child is attacked. I mean, if you ever asked a child what they were wearing when they were abused, you'd probably get slapped by their parents. Rightfully so. It doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter how you talk. It doesn't matter how you walk or what you say. It doesn't matter if you've agreed to something or not. if you can't control yourself, you're a beast. Even animals can control themselves. I mean, I've taken classes in biology. There are animals that understand consent. If a roach can understand consent, men can too. Every man understands consent. Anyone who says they don't understand consent is not somebody you want to be around. We all know what consent is. We all know to keep our hands to ourselves. You cannot grow up and become an adult without learning to control what you do. And when you grow up in such a patriarchal culture, and this isn't just extreme forms of religion, this is so ingrained in our secular culture that we elect a man into the White House like Trump that can't respect women's boundaries. We overlook and elect a man with 26 misconduct accusations from various women because we don't care about victims. And anyone who says, I care about victims, but still votes for these people is a liar. You cannot care about victims and still vote for these people. And it wasn't just one thing, it was many things. Women can't hold senior leadership positions. They're not supposed to ask questions. They're not supposed to ever be in charge unless it's all women in the room. The hierarchy that men know best, and that men and their will and desires are the only viewed desire. I mean, last time we talked about books that deny that women have a sex drive without the presence of a man. Female sexuality isn't even discussed unless it has to do with a man. But men are described as fully functioning, sovereign people. You open up any Christian book that comes from the extremist parts of Christianity, you will not find a book that I'm aware of that talks about female sexuality outside of being a wife or being a woman who's living in sin. They won't show a woman having autonomy. They show and have stories about men who may or may not be married, who are married, or have no plans of being married. They talk about men with respect. And the only time they chastise men is when they don't view women as having value, but that value is still tied up with a man. I mean, I remember being a teenager in Sunday school, and then the boys were being talked to about respecting women. Not one time did they ever say a woman should be respected, and that was it. They always said because she's someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's sister. Women don't have value outside of the men they're tied to. If you don't have a man in your life in various ways, they deny you have sexuality at all. Because if there's not a man involved, what's the point in having female sexuality? Because they deny that women can have healthy, happy, full, complete lives without men. Which is why white evangelists or pastors ridicule women for being child-free and man-free. They don't believe a woman has any function outside of pushing kids out of her or being a man's property. And if a woman doesn't get married, she's considered under the spiritual headship of her father. Women aren't viewed as women aren't viewed as their own island. They're always a peninsula. They're always attached to a man. A father, brother, husband, a male in-law, a male guardian. Women and their sexuality are never discussed outside of some patriarchal relationship. Women who behave in ways men do, where they're carefree, they view themselves as autonomous, they approach their sexuality, freedom, and independence the way a man does, she's a threat. And these people will do everything they can to bring her down to the level they want, which is dehumanization. Because these types of groups don't see women as being their own person. You're either under a man's ownership and spiritual headship, or you're getting through that part of your time where you aren't as fast as possible by finding a man. You go into church, you find a woman who's 35 plus. They're always asking them, why aren't you married? It's never, what career do you have? Are you fulfilling a dream, or do you travel? It's always, why aren't you married? Who did you come with today? It's never about them. It's always about who they're attached to. Which is why most women don't even have their last names after they marry. Religion doesn't like women who are child-free and man-free, because then they dehumanize them by saying, well, you're going to die alone with your cats. What is wrong with dying with your cats? I mean, I haven't heard of a cat that kills you, because in this country, every 10 minutes, a man kills their intimate partner. I mean, 9 out of 10 women will still choose the bear. Because bears don't ruin your reputation. They don't lie about you to get your family on their side. They don't abuse you. They don't financially manipulate you. They don't wait till you're asleep and then assault you while you're unconscious. I'd always choose the bear. And any woman who doesn't, they're either naive or they like to play Russian roulette. And I mean, I don't shame people. But I will always feel safe in a room full of women. But if there's one man in the room, I don't feel safe. Even if they're the nicest person. That's just the world we live in. And I've met women from around the world. I used to be an Uber and Lyft driver. I would meet people from around the world. From every country, state, territory, continent. And I would ask them questions about how safe they feel. How men treat them. And overall, it's not good. It's terrible. And the more patriarchal your culture is, the less they see you as a human being. And people fit into many categories. Those who don't care, those that enable, those that pray, and very few, I would say, fit into the category of we aren't afraid of them. Because they haven't given us a reason to. That doesn't mean down the line we're not going to be afraid. But yes, as long as we elect white, straight, cis people, male, definitely, women will probably not advance much more than they have. We need to start electing women consistently. And having a female as a vice president is not the same thing as having a president. Because the world leaders don't look at the president and respect the president in any way like they wouldn't if it was a woman. Because a lot of the countries around the world have nothing but contempt for their women. And there's a lot of countries out there that treat women so much better than America does. I mean, you look at any European country that doesn't have the death penalty. They're 80% atheists. They're known for discovering scientific equations and winning Nobel Peace Prizes and all kinds of modern jumps forward. Very few to none are countries that are known as being religious or patriarchal. The best countries to live in and have good quality of life, they're all atheistic countries by far. And most of them are very up north, like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland. They're countries that most people probably wouldn't want to live in the winter, even though it's a beautiful area to be in. Very similar to Alaska, where I live. But if you want to be the most progressive, wealthiest place, don't be in a religious area.